Hello and welcome to DEQ's Continuous Data Submission Template tutorial. In this video, we'll cover how to use our Excel template to prepare your continuous data for submission to DEQ. Continuous data are data collected at regular intervals with the same set of monitoring equipment. A typical example is continuous temperature data that has been collected every 30 minutes. If you're preparing non-continuous grab data for submission, we recommend you review the video that covers use of DEQ's grab data template. We realize that reformatting data can be a burden at first, but once the formatting is complete, using this template will make data submission easier for both parties. This template is based on EPA's data submission template, so if you've used their template before to submit data to Storette, this might look somewhat familiar. Here's a tip. If you have questions or need assistance filling out this template, please contact DEQ at the email address listed on the webpage where you downloaded the template. Okay, let's get started. When you open the data submission template, the document should open on the Instructions tab. This tab gives you a bunch of information about how this template is set up. You can find the same information in the template instructions document posted to our website. The main table describes the different tab groups. White tabs for general information, orange tabs for column header information, blue tabs for data entry, and green tabs for allowed domain values and lookup lists. The column header color guide explains what the different column header colors mean and describes how you'll know when a conditional column is required. The search tab provides a quick way to search some of the longer lists included in this template. This tab will be more important when we get to the blue data entry tabs. You can enter all or part of the item you're looking for in the appropriate search box, and the remaining boxes will automatically pull up the other necessary information. It is important to use the values from those search boxes because certain cells, such as characteristic name, will only accept valid values. For example, if your organization collects temperature data, it is important that you specify what temperature you're measuring. Type temp in the characteristic name search box. Hit enter. Then click on the down arrow attached to that search box. You'll see all of the options for temperature measurements. Select the appropriate option and use this when entering your temperature data on the Results tab. This type of conversion will likely require the most time to complete between searching and replacing. Here's a tip. If you'll be doing a lot of searching, it may be helpful to open a second window so that you can have the Search tab and the Data Entry tab open at the same time. To open a second window, click View on the ribbon, then select New Window. Due to some merged cells, copying and pasting directly to the data entry pages may add extra columns. Instead, type the info into the correct data entry cells once, then copy to the corresponding cells. The Project Info tab lists each of the column headers on the Project's Data Entry tab, as well as the information on the length and type of data allowed, and a description of what should go into each column. Underlined column headers correspond to a list of allowed values. Clicking on an underlined column header name will take you to the list of allowed values. The monitoring location info, deployment info, results info, pre-post info, and audit data info tabs contain the same type of column header information pertaining to their respective data entry tabs. The Organization's Details tab is where you'll start entering your information. This tab provides a way for DEQ to know who is submitting data. Follow the example form on the right. The Projects tab is where you'll start entering your data. The columns are formatted to match the restrictions listed on the orange Project Info tab we just covered. So for instance, the Project ID column is limited to 35 characters including spaces. If you try to enter something that doesn't match the criteria, you'll get an error. Like this. Cells that require allowed values will have a drop-down arrow like the Approved QOP Indicator column. If conditional information is required based on previously entered data, the cell will become speckled red. Once a project has been submitted to DEQ and uploaded into OQWMS, there is no need to submit the information again. This worksheet is currently limited to 50 individual projects. If you want to submit data for more projects than this, contact DEQ at the email address listed on the web page where you downloaded the template. Here's a tip. If your agency collects data for multiple projects, compile and format the required information for as many as possible and upload once rather than formatting one project's information at a time. Here's another tip. If any of your projects have alternate project IDs or project names, like a name through a collaborator, the alternate project ID will need to be submitted as well as the primary project ID. This information is important to make sure we don't already have your data in our database. This can occur when a collaborator organization also submits data to DEQ under a different project ID. The Monitoring Locations tab is where you'll enter descriptive information about the specific sites used for a project. The formatting I previously mentioned is carried over into this tab. Pop-up boxes will appear with tips or formatting information on certain cells, such as latitude or source map scale. Once the information for a monitoring location has been submitted to DEQ, there's no need to submit it again, even if the monitoring location is sampled during multiple projects. The monitoring location name should always include the name of the water body being sampled and other geographic descriptors. These fields in red are for DEQ staff. Please don't fill them out. This worksheet is currently limited to 500 monitoring locations. Here's a tip. Since data for any monitoring location can be tied to any project, compile a large list of monitoring locations and format them all at once to save time in the future. Here's another tip. Monitoring location IDs longer than 16 characters may be trimmed when uploading to DEQ's OCWMS database. Try to use IDs shorter than 16 characters. The Deployment tab is where information about the period of deployment is provided. Each row represents the start and end of monitoring at a site using a specific logger. Each deployment needs to have, at a minimum, a site visit for deployment and retrieval for each parameter, even if no audits are reported. If a parameter does not have a start and end date on this worksheet, it will be assumed to have not happened, even if data is reported in the Results tab. The Results tab will require the most time to get in order. Again, the formatting follows what was described on the Results Info tab, as well as for the pop-up boxes and red speckling in cells if they are required based on previously entered data. If you're entering results associated with a project or monitoring location included in this template, the name will be available in the appropriate column's drop-down menu. This worksheet is currently limited to 500,000 results. Here's a tip. Match as much of your data to the formats in the template before entering. This will allow you to copy and paste large chunks of data at once. Here's another tip. Create a conversion list of your analytes and the accepted characteristic names from the template for easy find and replace. Moving forward, many labs have the ability to export analytical reports using the approved STORET, WQX, and OCWMS characteristic names. Contact your lab to see if they can and save yourself some time. Here's a heads up. If the dropdown in the characteristic name column only shows a very short list, go back to the Search tab and clear the characteristic name search box. The two lists are tied together, but we're working on a way to fix that. The Pre-Post tab is where you will enter information about the pre- and post-deployment accuracy checks. These checks are used to determine instrument accuracy. They are generally conducted in the office or lab before and after deployment of a logger. The accuracy checks have different requirements for each parameter and are defined in the parameters method. If you didn't conduct these accuracy checks or don't have this information, you may leave it blank. Leaving it blank does not mean DEQ won't use your data, but it makes it more difficult to evaluate data quality. If we think there might be an issue with the results and can't verify instrument accuracy, the results may receive a rejected status. The Audit Data tab is used to report field audit samples. Field duplicate results are also entered in this tab. If you didn't take field audits or don't have the audit information, you may leave this tab blank. Leaving it blank does not mean DEQ won't use your data, but just like leaving the pre-post information blank, not having this information makes it more difficult to evaluate data quality. If we think there might be an issue with the results and can't compare them to field audits, the data may receive a rejected status. The activity start date and activity end date are usually going to be the same. It's the same with activity start time and end time. The template calculates the activity ID column, so this column is locked. The activity type for temperature field audits or continuous temperature samples that are field duplicates is Quality Control Field Replicate Portable Data Logger. Field duplicates are when two temperature probes are deployed in the same location, one being a duplicate for quality control purposes. The sample collection method for most continuous data is going to be GRAB for grab sample audits and FieldMeter for continuous field duplicate samples. Once you have entered all of your data, the template can be saved using the naming convention of organization name _ project name _ start date end date.xlsx. Here's an example of a saved template name. That completes this tutorial. If you have any questions, comments, or suggestions on how we can improve this template, please contact DEQ at the email address listed on the web page where you downloaded the template. Thanks for watching DEQ's Continuous Data Submission tutorial.